Emma Mumford.
Emma Mumford.
Emma Mumford.
Emma Mumford.
The incredible Emma Mumford.
The leading manifestation expert in the UK, a 4-time best-selling author and a renowned speaker. She hosts the top spirituality podcast, Aligned Abundance, and is a trusted law of attraction YouTuber, helping hundreds of thousands manifest their dreams. With over a decade of experience, her teachings combine mindset, energy work, and spiritual alignment to empower others to embrace their most abundant self. Emma, welcome.
Hi, Emma. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Katie, for having me.
Oh, it's really lovely to meet you. I've got so many things I want to ask you. So I know that you are a manifestation expert, which is really exciting. And I just wanted to understand firstly a little bit about how that journey started for you. So how did it all begin?
Yeah, so taking it back to 2016, I was in a very, very different place in my life. I was working as a banking manager in a UK bank. I wouldn't say that that was the goal, the aspiration. I kind of just fell into that career very young and it just kind of happened. And that's where I was. But at the same time, I was experiencing not great relationships romantically. And also, I got myself into debt from taking on debt from this ex-boyfriend, as you do at that age. So for me, it was a really pivotal time in my life because I was at that point where I was in depression. I was having panic attacks every day in the bank. I couldn't go anymore. So I had to quit. I had to quit the job. And that was, in 2012, not 2016, 2012. And from there, I found extreme couponing, which is very random and very different to what I do now. And that really helped me because it allowed me to get out of debt. It allowed me to reset my life at such a young age. I was 18 at the time. And for me, it was just that lifeline of, okay, how can I empower myself in this situation, going from breakup, being in debt that wasn't even my fault, and leaving a really, really amazing corporate job at such a young age because I was having crippling panic attacks and depression. And, my mental health was not in a good space at all. So I then founded a company called Extreme Couponing and Deals UK. And I ran that company for 6 amazing years. And I helped people all across the UK save money, coupon, get out of debt, just like I had done. And in 2016 is when I had my spiritual awakening. And again, it was at the end of a not so great relationship. So relationships seem to be the catalyst for a lot of awakenings in my life, as they are for a lot of people. And this was really the kind of depth of my mental health at that point. I wanted to end my life. I didn't see a way forward at that point. And I think on the outside, people would have seen, me presenting on This Morning and having all this career success with my couponing as this, surely there's so many happy things in your life. And there was. And I think those two things can coexist of I was really struggling, but also my business gave me such a purpose to help people to wake up and to, help people save money and empower themselves. So I really do think that business saved me in so many ways over the years. And 2016 is when I found the word law of attraction. And I kept seeing it pop up in random videos online. And I thought, what on earth is this? Like, is it attracting a partner? Like, what does this mean? And I kept hearing the word manifestation, manifest. And I just really, really was intrigued by this concept. And I remember typing in how to turn a negative situation into a positive on Google. And Louise Hay popped up with a video. Obviously, I had no idea who this lady was at the time. And she was talking about manifestation and, like changing your life around. So I thought, well, what do I have to lose, right? I have nothing to lose at this point. I'm going to give this a go. And within 3 weeks, I was seeing huge transformations in my life. And, even in my mental health at that point as well, like learning to love myself, learning to look after myself, learning why I'd felt the anxiety and depression as well, for one. And then obviously I was seeing like money manifestations and career manifestations. And it was just a really exciting time to feel like, actually, I can change my life. This is in my control and I can empower myself with something like this to actually make a positive change. So long story short, I became completely obsessed with it, like I did with couponing. And it just kind of naturally was something that I would talk about on my channels. So I know it seems a bit strange, couponing and manifestation, but weirdly, people absolutely loved it. And it was just something that I really enjoyed sharing from a personal point of view, as something that really I enjoyed doing. So about a year in 2017 is when my community were like, we want to hear more about this. You know, you're obviously really good at manifesting. And I think it just felt like that natural evolution at that point to not just help people manifest money and save money, but also change their life and, you know, become happy like I had done. So that's how I came across it. And the rest is history.
Oh, wow. It sounds like an amazing sort of journey. So was it certain things that you could direct people to? So was it books, or was it certain people who you were inspired by at the time?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of people, I came across The Secret, which is by Rhonda Byrne, very, very straight away in my journey. And I loved reading that book and watching the movie on Netflix. And I feel like watching those was just like a remembering of, of course that's how life works. Of course that's how I've got to this place. So for me, it was really interesting to come across those really old school teachings because, you know, even in 2016, they were only 10 years old at that point. So, you know, people like Louise Hay, Esther and Jerry Hicks, Gabby Bernstein, Wayne Dyer, all the legends. You know, I read their books. I really, really dove into what the law of attraction was. And, you know, all these amazing teachers, you know, massively helped me at the beginning of my journey.
And so with that then, was there anything in particular that you felt or saw or experienced that really made you think, do you know what, that is really genuinely true? Because obviously there is different people who have sort of doubts about it, but was there something along the journey that you experienced that you thought, do you know what, that 100% is, it's worked for me?
Yeah, I would say my mental health because that was a really tangible example in my life that was such a constant for me and such an important thing that I wanted to change as well. So the kind of weight and pressure was on there to manifest, you know, feeling happier because that was the whole point of me doing this. And I think waking up 3 weeks later without anxiety in my stomach in the morning was for me a moment of, oh my God, I've had that feeling every day for years. And it's almost like, you know, if you have like a pain in your arm or something and you wake up and it's not there, you're like, oh, it's gone. Like you notice it because it's been such a constant. So for me, that was a really big, oh my gosh, that's gone. But another thing was probably about 6 months later, was when I manifested getting out of debt. So my intention was to be debt free. And I've spoken about this intention a lot in my books because I wasn't clear. I just kept saying I wanted to be debt free. But what did that mean? What was that amount? And that's where I kept blocking myself. So I sat down and I held myself accountable and I worked it all out. I went on the debt collector's website, totaled it all up, and it was just under about £6,000 at that time. And it was a little bit more than I thought it was, but that didn't fill me with fear, surprisingly. You know, you'd think, oh, if it's more, oh gosh, but actually having the clarity was actually really empowering to think, okay, but now I know what debt free means. And also at the same time, I was trying to manifest some other money in another area to support my business and things I wanted to grow in that side. And within 5 days of me sitting down, working out what debt free meant and having clarity on how much I needed to manifest for the business, how much I needed to manifest to be debt free. £11,000, which was the exact total I needed for both manifestations, came in within 5 days from a completely unexpected source I had no knowledge of before. I was not expecting that money. There was no, you know, conversations around that
Yeah.
money before.
Wow.
And when I was like, oh my gosh, that is the exact amount to pay off the debt and invest in my business, that I think for me was like a whoa moment because it was like, it was so uncanny that it was both amounts of money, not just one, that it just made total sense because the figure was absolutely spot on.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. And have you had any other experiences like that then? Or I mean, you've worked with many people as a life coach, and I'm sure just sort of being in the circle of the law of attraction and manifesting. What kind of things have inspired you? Have you heard any stories, or have you worked with anyone who's said something to you that has just made you think, wow, that is amazing?
How long have you got? I've been doing this a
Give
decade,
me
so
2 or
I've got
3. Give
probably
me give me a
100.
few. Give me a few, because I think sometimes it's that, it's that helping people believe when it
Of
comes to
course.
manifestation and sort of the law of attraction. And I do think, you know, thinking positively, and there's always gonna be someone who comes up with some, like toxic positivity people say about, and all of these sort of negatives. And I think it'd just be nice to give people some examples of, miracles that you may have heard of, or if you've worked with someone directly that's probably the better tool. So if you have any that spring to mind.
Yeah, and I think to touch upon what you've said there as well, is the law of attraction manifestation is not something you can switch on and switch off. It's not for a select few. And I think that's where the biggest criticisms come of, oh, well, it's okay for someone to say they've manifested something, but we're all manifesting. And if you take the
Yeah.
time to look back through even just moments where you said, oh my God, I said that was going to happen, or I knew that was going to happen, or I wrote that down, even if it's a goals list, and you that then manifested into your life, we are always manifesting. So I think that's important to note that the law of attraction is a law, just like the law of gravity. It's always on, it's always happening. You don't have to think about it. It's just your focus and what you're actually giving direction to that changes it. So you can manifest these things that we're talking about. But yeah, over the years, gosh, I've seen, incredible miracles in all areas of people's lives. I mean, I remember one of my amazing American clients, she was desperately trying to get out of debt herself. And she was a real estate agent at the time. And she was like, I really need this deal to go through. It was like a big pressure. It was a big amount of stress for her because this was the biggest transaction she'd had. I mean, she was still very new to the real estate sphere. So for me, I was like, wow, like this is so inspiring to see that she's going big, she's going for it. And I just remember, I think it was like a week after our session, her emailing me saying, Emma, I've freaking done it. $80,000 in the bank in a week. All the debts cleared. This is my biggest deal to date. And I was just so proud of her because it was just so inspiring to see someone go after a big goal and be like, do you know what? I'm not going to let my experience stop me. I'm not going to let all these things that we'd probably hear when we're at the beginning of our career stop us. I think the other ones has to be babies. For me, I'm such a sucker when people give me fertility or pregnancy, miracles, because I just think it's such a miracle to hear lovely stories of people having their dreams come true against all odds or, against being told that something's not going to happen. And, I've heard so many stories over the years in my inbox around women who were told they had less than 5% chance of conceiving naturally, which is a big proportion. Like it's a tiny percentage compared to, the percentage of not. And they said, whether it's through my books or I've worked with them one-to-one, that they have managed to go on and naturally conceive or, manifest the help, whether that's IVF or something else, that there's a route that's appeared that's enabled them to have a baby either naturally or through IVF. And I think that's beautiful to see because again, there's so much pressure when it comes to that because you feel like it's your fault, like it's your
Yeah.
body, your partner's body as well. And it's just so amazing to see against even what people are saying their percentages or chances are that, with the right tools or with the right mindset or even with the right physical help as well, that they are able to achieve those dreams. But whether it's a dream house, I mean, I've got so many dream house examples, even my own example with the house
Yeah.
here of, needing a miracle and that miracle showing up. And, it is about asking. It's not just for the select few who believe, miracles are accessible to anybody at any time.
So in terms of, as you said there was a few examples. So if it was any of those examples, where would you begin? If you had to give someone advice now and, if they were in any of those situations, whether it be a house or a baby, how do they begin to go on the journey to find that, to receive that miracle?
Yeah, well, I would say, first of all, acceptance is a big point of it because we can't, as much as I'm here to be delusional, I think there's a big thing on like Delulu is the Solulu in the manifestation sphere. And
Yeah.
I do agree with that to some degree. But as I shared with my own debt example, just saying debt free was not enough for the law of attraction and manifestation to actually work. So you can't bury your head in the sand. That's the first point. So whether it's health related, whether it's financially related, we know with finances, a lot of people avoid things because it's uncomfortable. We don't want to admit the situation fully, or we don't want to see the situation fully. But the universe is a divine mirror. So if we're not seeing the situation clearly, how can the universe reflect miracles and reflect the blessings you're wanting if you're avoiding things? Because that avoidance is just going to be reflected back to you. And that's what came up for me time and time again with the debt. I was so frustrated that I wasn't manifesting anything for 6 months when all it took was just to sit down, log in, face the facts, have that number, and let that feel that number. For some people, they might think, oh gosh, I don't want to know how much I'm in debt. It might trigger me. But I always say 9 times out of 10, you'll be pleasantly surprised. It's probably less than what you think it is. And even if it's more like mine was, I was relaxed in that moment because I felt empowered. I had the information and I knew what I could do moving forwards to then act from that space. So we have to empower ourselves, first of all, with the reality of the situation and obviously what we need to know in that situation. Then I would say the manifestation process. Blessings and miracles absolutely follow the same 5-step process as setting a desire and manifesting your desires. So we have to ask, first of all. That's the first step. So whether that's asking for a manifestation or asking for a miracle or creative solution to a situation, as I've shared so far, we have to be clear. We have to know what that looks like and not just say, I want to be debt free or I want to manifest money. What does it look like? You don't just want to manifest any old house. You have an idea of what the house is. So write that down, write a list, almost like a shopping list, or do a vision board if you're more visual and creative of what your dream house looks like, what your dream career looks like, what your dream partner is, their characteristics,
Yeah.
what they look like, etc. When you can give that clarity, the universe reflects that clarity back to you in your physical experiences. So we have to ask. We always have to ask because that is the first step. Second step is believe. And this is more of an internal step. It's more of a mindset step. So when we're talking about a miracle specifically, you want to obviously believe that it's going to happen and that can come to you. Now, this is where some resistance can come up through limiting beliefs, fears, and blocks. So that inner critic, that inner voice we hear of, well, who are you to ask for that? Who are you
Yeah.
to do that? You've done that before. It didn't work out. All that internal dialogue we have, that is our inner critic giving us valuable feedback of our beliefs and our identities. Now, we don't manifest what we want, we manifest who we are. And this is where the identity piece comes in of your beliefs and who you are. And your beliefs then shape your actions as well. So we always have to deal with the mindset and subconscious first, so that your actions align with who you want to be and who you are to manifest that desire. So it's looking at what stands in between you and your desire and clearing any resistance, clearing anything that's not supporting that coming into your life at the moment. And with manifestations, that could be feeling worthy. That could be feeling that you deserve those things. That could be feeling like you can have those things. There's so many different avenues that limiting beliefs and fears can go down, and it will be completely unique to a lot of people. So not every single person has the same limiting belief or fear, and we all have them. We're all humans. We all have those stories and experiences and lived experience as well from our personal history. Third step is trust, and this is your aligned action step. So manifestation is a co-creation process. So we must meet the universe halfway to enter into that sacred dance, as I call it, of manifesting and creating. So
Yeah.
those first 3 steps are your action. You're going 50% of the way. And in the trust step, it's making sure you're in the field of opportunity and possibility to receive your desire. So I always love to use the lottery quote of you have to be in it to win it, right? You have
Yeah.
to be in the field of opportunity to manifest. So if you're wanting to call in a job, are you applying? Are you putting yourself out there? Are you showing the universe, here I am, I'm ready to receive? So it's like, a romantic partner as well. You sat on your couch at home waiting for your perfect person to just knock on your door and be like, hey, I'm here. We have to show up. We have to take aligned action to be in that place to receive aligned opportunities and miracles and abundance. So yes, it's trusting the process. Yes, it's trusting divine timing, but that is where you take your aligned action at that point because your beliefs are going to match that aligned action as well at that point. Fourth step is when we then take our step back to receive, and this is letting go. Now, arguably one of the most important steps in the process, but I would argue probably one of the most hardest to embody. I absolutely am in that camp. It has been one of probably the biggest lessons I've had to really embody along my journey because it feels like it doesn't make sense. And old school teachings didn't really talk about letting go and surrendering at all. So it was just like, do more things, take more action, meet the universe more. And then you get into this 90% hustle mode where you're pushing and pushing and forcing and forcing. And that's not true manifestation. True manifestation is co-creation. So letting go and surrendering is not giving up. I think a lot of people misinterpret that step as, oh, it's not here, so I'll just give up. It's not that at all. It's becoming okay with both outcomes, this or something better for the highest good of all. And it's an embodiment step. So at this step, you're already living as the version of yourself who has your desire. You feel at peace because you know it's already yours. All that work you've done before, you relax into receiving in that surrendered state. Then fifth step is receive, but it is still a step. It's not just as simple as woohoo, your desire's here, relax, celebrate. That's the second part. The first part of that step is getting into the energy of receiving. And I always love to bring this into this conversation around receiving because I know that so many of us struggle to receive, whether that's love, compliments, support, gifts, money, whatever it may be. Ask yourself, how much do I allow myself to receive? Because the answer will probably surprise you. And like myself, this was a huge thing I had to work through as well. But our ability to receive in everyday life is a direct reflection of our ability to receive abundance as well. So the more you can allow yourself to receive and not be like, no, don't be silly, I'll get it. Instead of just saying,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you, that would be great. You allow yourself to receive, which means even more abundance is going to come to you. So those are the 5 steps to follow with miracles or manifestations.
And do you think that then if something isn't happening or is kind of like, 99.9%, it's not happened and it's not going to, what would be the reason do you think, with that? Say, for instance, it was trying for a baby and, it just doesn't, it's just not working out. The parents are, neither of them, it's not coming together for some reason. Maybe they've gone through the IVF journey and, everything's been a no up until now. And, maybe they've kind of given up almost, or almost surrendered a little. What would you say there? Would you say that they have to look at, maybe if that was the example and it just wasn't working
Mm.
out, what kind of advice could you give?
So, from the spiritual lens of if we were talking generally about any manifestation,
Yeah.
it's more of a case of it's not that it's not going to happen. It's a case of, are you looking at tunnel vision of one outcome? So are
Yeah.
you open to all possibilities? Because there are infinite possibilities in the universe. But what we do is as humans, we control. We're like, but it has to look like this. Me logically can only see this way of it happening. So depending on the situation and circumstances, obviously, you could say, well, are you open to all possibilities? Are you actually surrendered here? Or are you still controlling or in fear potentially because of what the 3D situation is showing you? And that's not to take away from what is actually happening in reality, because that's key information as well. We have to, as I said at the beginning, accept where we are and acknowledge that, because that is powerful as well. So in terms to the baby scenario, of course that hurts to hear, right? Of course, when you've gone along that journey, you've gone along so many options, you've exhausted everything, you are going to be exhausted. You're going to feel probably let down. You're going to think, what the hell is happening here? I trusted the universe. I did all these things. And I don't think there's a specific answer that anybody can give anybody of why something doesn't happen, because the law of attraction is one of the 7 energetic laws of the universe. There's 6 others. So the law of attraction, I think some people think governs everything, but it doesn't. It's one of 7. So there are other universal laws at play as well. Then there's the bigger conversation of, spirituality and soul contracts, what we're here to do. And I think all of these conversations are so valuable to have, because we're not meant to know it all, right? That's our job here to learn here in Earth School. We're meant to learn these things of, but what happens and why doesn't something happen? So with the law of attraction, you always get your desire, just not always in the way that you thought. And that is something I've seen play out time and time again in my own life, in so many people's lives around me. I don't want to keep using the baby scenario, because
No,
obviously
no,
there's so many
no.
different ways that this
Yeah.
can unfold. I want to obviously include everybody in the conversation. But in terms of manifestations, it's more of a case of, am I gripping onto this too tightly? Are there other possibilities that I'm not considering because I'm locking in on one possibility? But when we do, we block the miracles in other areas. We block the miracles from coming through how the universe wants to deliver our desire, because we're so fixated on, but this is the only way it can happen. And I actually had a client recently who has had fertility issues throughout her life. She was actually born without a womb. And for her, IVF's, not possible, for example. So she came to me obviously feeling very, very helpless in this situation, because she was being told no from everywhere. And then they conceived their first child through surrogacy. And obviously that was a miracle for her, something she hadn't considered until that became available. And then when they wanted to have their second child, they couldn't use the same surrogate for different circumstances. So then she felt like she was back at square one of how is this all going to come around? And then she kept getting setback and setback and setback. And, as someone witnessing that as well, you think, gosh, like how much can one person go through as well, for
Yeah.
sure. Like it's totally exhausting to go through that process. But, kudos to her. She kept that faith. She kept going. And it was so inspiring to see somebody again take their own power and say, actually, I do believe. I believe by myself. Nobody's telling me that. I believe that this is something I want to follow, and I'm going to follow that intuition. So I believe when we follow our intuition, we're always guided to what's for our highest good. So if you know in your soul, like you're meant to write that book, you're meant to go live in that country, like this is what we have to listen to, that part of us that is always guiding us.
That's what I was going to say. Where do you think this comes from in ourselves? When we have these desires and wants, where do you think it comes from? Is it in our mind? Is it in our soul? Is it sort of a divine purpose? Where do you think it comes from?
There's so many schools of thought with this that really intrigues me because I'm like, like imagine if that is where it comes from. So of course it comes from our intuition, it comes from our soul, our desire. And some would even argue that it comes from our higher self, almost the future self of us, who are saying, I've moved to Spain or whatever, for example. So I'm giving that past version of myself that information to like start that process, start looking into it. So, in many spiritual texts, they believe time doesn't exist and that we're experiencing life all at the same time. I think that's a very, very interesting topic.
Yeah.
And I think on a very human level and from a practical level, which I always come from, for me, it's more of a case of it comes from our higher self, from our soul. We have human desires that we want, whether it's to progress in our career, to have a happy relationship. But I do feel there are certain things that are destined for us throughout our life. Maybe that's who we meet, where we live, what career or purpose we have that will kind of filter through to us, and we'll kind of get those intuitive hits of, oh, I should write that book, or oh, I should go there.
Yeah. I see what you mean, yeah. I think it's interesting because it's almost as well, are we being influenced in certain ways? Like certain people maybe are interested in wealth as an example and maybe want to become a millionaire. And is that a part of their destiny? Is that something
Mm.
that, it's being imposed on us by society? And then maybe someone will be fixed upon, certain outcomes, as you've said. So if it was somebody wants to be a millionaire, they may decide, I want to win the lottery and only focus on that. But listening
Mm.
to what you said there is quite interesting because it's almost like you're saying if someone has the desire to be a millionaire, it's not just focusing on the one. If you see what I mean, it's not just say
Yeah.
focusing on the lottery. You could set that intention and then move towards maybe all things and try all things, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, and the lottery is one way of coming into that
Mm,
money, and this is what I see, people blocking themselves with one avenue of it has to happen like that. There's nothing wrong with being specific, but when you're being specific through a means of control, you're resisting, and that resistance is just being reflected back to you. So there are infinite ways money can come to you, but the other part of that conversation is it actually in alignment for you? Do you actually want to manifest that money? There is no rules of what you can manifest. The universe is not there governing what's right or wrong or who can have what. Like it's equal. It's equal in everything. We are the ones who are choosing what we want to call in, what we want to manifest. So if there is no limits of what you can manifest, it then comes down to, is it actually in alignment for you? Why do you want to manifest £1 million? What are you going to do with that £1 million? How is your £1 million going to positively impact the collective as well? Because it's not just about you having something. Manifestation is so much deeper than that. It's how can me having a partner, a house, a career, money positively impact others as well. So when you take manifestation to that deeper level and you know your why, first of all, you know that it's in alignment for you and it feels like an absolute hell yes that you want to call that in. It's not from comparison. It's not because so and so on Instagram's manifesting it. It is your soul aligned desire. There is nothing in this world that can stop it. So when you bring it into, okay, I want to manifest, say, for instance, £10,000 for house renovations. Okay, well, you're going to pay some people, some, contractors or builders to do those house renovations or whoever. So they're then going to be manifesting money to pay their bills and put food on their table. So it's that constant thought of how is me having this actually rippling out into the collective and helping other people as well.
Do you think that's where you need to start when you're looking at the desires that you've got? Do you think you need to start by addressing the issue of why?
100%, 100%. Because if you don't know your why, when you go through belief, when you go through trust, maybe you're getting setbacks, rejections, no's. Your why is what grounds you in time and time again. If you know your why, you have that unwavering trust of why you're doing something. It's like when you set a goal to lose weight or go to the gym. What is your why? That is going to get you up at 6 a.m. to do that run. That is what is going to get you up every day to stick to that habit. So your why is so important.
And I saw in Aligned Abundance, you talked about kind of sort of things maybe, having to be in alignment, as the book is titled, being aligned with certain desires. And so is that a feeling, would you say, being aligned, with an outcome? So also there's the why, but is there an actual feeling of, I do feel aligned with that? Is there sort of more of an intuition and a sense that we need to get to grasp what's right for us?
Yeah, so alignment is energetic, 100%. And it is connected to our intuition because when we're in alignment, things flow, things feel effortless, things just feel magnetic. It's like when you make a decision and things just effortlessly happen like a domino effect, and you just think, wow, just everything's happening easily. That is alignment. Whereas when you're getting closed doors, uphill struggles, battles, rejections, and you're just thinking, like, oh my gosh, I'm just like between a rock and a hard place here, that is a sure sign of something is out of alignment. And it might not be yourself, but it could be, for instance, that something you're doing is not quite the right approach. And this is what we were saying around being open to all possibilities. That is alignment in itself, of bringing yourself back into your body, back into your power of what can I control here? How can I maybe approach this situation differently? And in the book, I have my 3-step protocol for alignment of stop, reset, and realign. Of if it was in alignment, it would be flowing. So first of all, we need to stop and just witness what's going on, witness the resistance, witness the frustrations, as I was sharing that awareness piece, so that we can see what's feeling good and what's feeling not. Because what is in alignment is going to feel expansive. It's going to feel light. It's going to feel good. And it's going to flow. Whereas when something isn't in alignment, it might cause anxiety to your nervous system, your body. It might feel that it's contracting. It might feel that it's an uphill battle and you're just hitting these roadblocks out of nowhere. That means that some attention needs to be done there. So you reset the energy, and you reset the energy through the process of the book, but then also through looking at, okay, how can I shift my energy here? How am I approaching this? Because intention plus action equals results. So if your intention is still in alignment, so you still want that same goal, it still feels good to achieve, and that's where you're heading, and it still feels right for you, then the action's what needs to change here. So whether that's trying a different approach, being open to all possibilities, for example, you change the energy with that different action, which creates a different result. Because if nothing changes, nothing changes. So that realignment piece is then coming back into alignment within yourself to then assess, okay, how can I take a different action here? What is a different route? Or maybe it's even surrender. It might not be more action, to bring in that aligned shift to come in.
How do you know, do you think then, that it's either change or just surrender? How do you know? Do you have to just try them, or?
Well, I think there's questions you can ask yourself. And of course, there's a whole process in the book with
Yeah.
prompts, with practices to lovingly guide you through that, because everybody's going to be different here. It might be limiting beliefs and fears and blocks here. It could be that surrender priest. If you know you are controlling something and you're going 90% of the way, you're forcing, you're trying to make something happen, surrender first of all, because then you're going to get that information of, is there something underneath that control? Is there a belief that is fueling that control, where I feel I need to be in control? I feel I need to push it. I need to make this happen. You're not going to be able to get that awareness if you're still trying to push. You need to take that step back to be able to create the space to have that awareness within yourself of, why have I been pushing this? Why have I been forcing this? And then you can start to get that inquiry and that information from yourself, from your subconscious and your body of what is actually going on there. So if it is action, you're probably going to be going 10%. So maybe you're someone who is sat on the sofa, hoping to win the lottery, hoping to manifest that dream person, but you're not actually getting out there and meeting the universe halfway. So I always use the scale of, are you a 90% manifester or a 10% manifester? So we know it's 50-50 what we should be going. But if you're a 90% manifester, you're going to be controlling. You're going to be the one to make it happen. You don't even need the universe. You are going to make it happen. But that's not manifestation. That is just force and control. Whereas your 10% manifestors are the ones who are like, you know what? I don't need to do anything. The universe is just going to bring this to me. And that's not co-creation as well. So if you can identify where you are on that scale, then you can start to see, am I doing too much? And actually taking a step back would allow me to actually align and take aligned action in the right way. Or do I actually need to surrender or maybe even take more action because maybe you haven't even met the universe halfway at that point?
Yeah. I think, like, for me, I've always thought that when it comes to a roadblock or the mountain, it's almost like you need to learn a lesson. There's something there that's trying to teach you something. Or I feel like I do learn lessons after a difficulty of some sort. Like, there's always, you never want to hear that. And, especially when you're in a difficult place. But I
Yeah.
feel that for me personally, if I've ever faced a challenge, that 9 times out of 10 after, at least, I'm thinking, oh, okay, now I either need to do this, or like, it teaches me something on my own personal journey. What do you think to that?
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And hindsight's a beautiful thing, but it's not something we always have in the moment. And I think that's why it feels frustrating for so many people because you want an answer. You want to know why something's happening. It's completely human to want that and think, well, what is all of this happening for? But
Yeah.
that's where we are in that real trust piece of we're not always going to have that answer. But like you said, you will always have a shift from it. And that shift could be a huge epiphany of, oh my gosh, I've been looking at that completely wrong. Or it
Yeah.
might be, actually, I needed to learn that lesson so that I could embody and embrace that manifestation even better. Like, over the years when I was told no by publishers or, even rejected in relationships, I'd think, well, what's the point of that? Like, I thought that this was it, universe. But
Yeah.
I look back and I think, gosh, I was not ready for that. And if I had
Yeah.
have received or like met my husband at that time, I would not have been in the best place to receive that and show up as the best version of myself to get married and to obviously be in that committed relationship. So I think there's so many pearls of wisdom that we can take from those experiences, but we're only going to be able to have that from that hindsight.
Everything happens at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then just going back to what you were saying there about kind of the 10%, 90%, do you think that the ultimate kind of success to a degree happens with sort of the 50-50 then? So you feel that there's sort of 50% is manifesting, 50% is that energy. So you have to have those two coming together, maybe? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's so many nuances of spiritual texts that very similarly say the same things of its practical work with energy work. Of course, we're mind, body, spirit. And we first of all bring our manifestations into our aura field, into our energy field, which is around our physical body. So that's why psychics, for example, can see possibilities because they're reading your aura, your energy field, and they can see what is kind of floating around in your field of opportunity, sort of. So that's a really great practical example of how that works on that level. Then we bring it down into our mind and in our subconscious mind, which is where the cognitive work comes in. And then finally, we bring it down into the body through embodiment, which is bringing it into reality. So this is why mind, body, and spirit, body included, that nervous system is so important in the manifestation process because it's not one or the other. It's not just the practical, it's the spiritual as well. But it is that 3-step process of bringing it in through spirit, mind, and then body to bring it into full reality.
She was saying that you had sort of a spiritual awakening, and I've seen through your books and what have you, and just you talk about sort of chakras and crystals and on YouTube and what have you. So, do you want to tell me a little bit more about that? So, how does that come into manifestation, and is it a spiritual practice or?
Yeah, I would say a lot of spiritual practices naturally complement the manifestation process. It's not that you have to get into those things, it's completely, separate to manifestation. But I do see these tools as great supporters to help you feel good, to help you be in a positive vibration. So, yeah, naturally, as you go along your spiritual journey, I think many people find the law of attraction at the beginning of their journey. And then it deepens, and then you go into the inner work, and then you realize, okay, there's a little bit of work to be done with my mindset here. So then you might turn to more holistic and well-being practices and tools. You might discover things like crystals. You might discover things like angels, for example, or, a whole array of different works like astrology, numerology. And I think all of those things just really positively complement and are just a great way to understand ourselves better. So for me, yeah, it was that kind of deepening of my spiritual journey of learning all these different spiritual tools that are out there, but just getting to experience them to get to know myself better.
What does spirituality mean to you then? What does a spiritual awakening mean to you?
I think for me, it was really that awakening to what was really going on. I don't think that's the definitive meaning of spiritual awakening, but that's what happened for me, ideally. It was really a case of I was wanting to end my life. I was not happy. I had depression. I had undiagnosed PTSD at that point. So for me, it was a constant struggle every day to be in my body, to be in this world. And for me, finding spirituality was healing on so many levels, not necessarily spiritual tools as a whole. Therapy came into that,
Yeah.
EMDR came into that. So much therapy over the years went into that process. But for me, it started to give me answers. It started to help me understand myself better, understand what was going on, but also how I can empower myself to, manifest and to be happy and learn what self love was, for example. So I think for me, it was really that coming home to myself and actually healing and being able to experience what I wanted to, which was just happiness. That was the original intention. So I think spirituality as a whole, what a spiritual awakening is, kind of more in a broader sense, is that piece of awakening to you, coming home to yourself. And that's going to look different for everybody. No spiritual awakening, and you don't even have to use the term spiritual
No, no.
awakening. You don't even need to be spiritual. It's your journey, what you connect with. But I think it definitely is such a beautiful journey to go along, however that looks for someone, because at the end, if happiness and, being at peace within yourself is the goal, then, I think a lot of people in the world would want that.
Is self-love the most important thing when it comes to manifestation as well then? Do you feel
I
like you
would
have
say
to
it's
love yourself to
Yeah, I
manifest
would
into
say it's a
life?
huge part of it because it's identity work, isn't it, at the end of the day? If you are, someone who has a healthy, open relationship with yourself where you do view yourself positively and you give yourself compassion and you talk to yourself nicely, of course that is going to absolutely help you feel better, which helps you manifest because of your vibration. If you are in that place of, self-hate or speaking to yourself negatively or not liking how your body is, for example, there's so many different lenses to self-love, then yeah, if you're wanting to lose weight, for example, and manifest that, but you're talking to yourself so harshly, is that really the vibration of the you who's lost the weight? Would you talk to yourself like that once you've lost the weight? Probably not. So we always have to embody who we are to manifest. So who that version of ourselves who has our desire, we have to be that now to bring it into our reality. So yeah, the version of you that is in a loving relationship, would you talk to yourself negatively? Would you have good self-worth? You probably would. So you're going to obviously work on that through the journey to be that, to have that in your life. So yeah, I would say self-love's come into it so many times for me. And the more you can work on that, it's only going to benefit you.
So just saying what you were saying there, so you were saying that that's really interesting. So it's kind of like when you've got something in your mind that you want, it's about then embodying that person. So like you said, if it was weight, then you need to love yourself. So because I did read a lot about you were saying about sort of trauma and healing trauma and going through all of that. And then that makes a lot of sense there with what you just said about, it's kind of like you have to do the work on yourself in order to open up to everything coming in. Because like you said, if it's about attracting the things you want, you need to be in the state that you ultimately want to be in. So if it was, yeah, like I feel like I'm rambling on there, but do you know what I mean? So it's like you have said there that you want, if you want to lose weight, then you need to love yourself first, because then, yeah, okay, I get that. And the
Yeah.
same with
And
anything then. So I suppose, because there's a lot about that with the law of attraction and the secret and what have you, isn't there? And manifesting. It's about, it's all about like almost like visualizing what you want, but then you're saying as well, like embodying it and acting almost like it. Is that right? Am I getting that
yeah,
right? I
so
don't want to say that wrong.
So it's being. It's not just
Big.
visualizing it. It's not acting, because acting is not, acting is like, an actor, you're performing it, right?
Yeah.
It's not performance, it's real. So you have to embody it. Now, at first, this is why I don't like the term of like faking it until you make it, because I think it's helpful to some degree to kickstart the process of like, stepping into that. I am confident, but it's not going to guide you the whole way, faking it until you make it, because it's not authentic energy. It's not real, right?
Yeah.
So at some point, it has to become that embodied belief of confidence, of self-worth, whatever it is. And as you were saying there with examples, it's like a job. So many people come to me hating their current job. It might be toxic, it might be negative in their workplace, and they will never manifest the job that they want until they become grateful for the job that they have. And that's not to say you have to dismiss or spiritually bypass or toxic positivity your way out of it, because no, that's not awareness. But is that job paying for a roof over your head? Is there maybe a friend at work that you do like and you're really grateful for that friendship? What has that job given you the opportunity to do that you can be grateful for? So when you can then approach that situation from neutrality instead of negativity or just, I can't wait to leave there. When you can approach it from neutrality, that's when the new job can come in, because you're never going to manifest what you want through hate. You're never going to manifest something through, feeling negative towards what you currently have. Gratitude is the answer to absolutely everything. So shifting that perspective of, your body, for instance, the more you are grateful for your amazing body that keeps you alive every day and keeps you healthy, what a difference to, speaking negatively to yourself. So even if you're not where you want to be right now, there are still so many reasons to be thankful. And when you are grateful and look at your beautiful body in a different light and start to even just have those more compassionate conversations with yourself, it's not about faking it, saying, I love myself, and, that completely feels untrue to you. It's about just saying, how can I actually just be grateful for my body, for keeping me alive and for, keeping me alive for 32 years of my life. And, it's kept me healthy. It allows me to dance and do all the things that I love. There's so many reasons why we can be grateful even before what our desired reality has come in.
That's that's great. I mean, even just thinking of it like that, allowing people to have that moment to think, it's almost like people wouldn't necessarily think about how gratitude could impact you in that way. I know that having sort of a better attitude and being sort of grateful each day has a massive impact, sort of mental, for your mental wellness, and just because it sort of refocuses and reshapes. But just even on that law of attraction element, it's drawing the things in, because ultimately, because that was great what you were saying about how to start even with, the body being something that actually helps you live each day and all of these things. Because there's some people who can really hate themselves, but you're
Yes.
saying such a really, it's like a simple thing, but it's really powerful, because you can start there, with gratitude. It can be quite difficult to say, oh, well, why, going from hating yourself to loving yourself like that. That was such a really great technique to be able to just say, well, just start with your breath and
Yeah.
start by saying, actually, I'm grateful for just this breath. And it will lead into all these other wonderful things. Do you think then that gratitude, was that a turning point for yourself then? Did you bring gratitude into your own life?
Yeah, hugely. I mean, gratitude is something that is so openly spoken about in the manifesting process across all texts you read. So it's something that's shared a lot. But as you said, it doesn't always feel authentic or true at that
Yeah.
time. And that's not gratitude. If you were writing down things in your gratitude practice that you're just like, well, I want to feel grateful for that, but you're not currently grateful for it, that's not going to give you the real essence and the good energy of a gratitude practice. It has to feel true to you here and now. And that means meeting yourself with where you're at. That means meeting your mindset with where you're at. And if saying affirmations or things that feel like a stretch, just break them down. As I shared, it doesn't have to be, I love myself. It just has to be,
Yeah.
I feel comfortable with myself. I like myself, whatever the statement is. And then you build from that with time. The more you feel it, the more you express it, the more you give yourself that compassion, it's going to feel more true. As we know, it takes 21 days to change a habit, change a thought form. So if you did that work for 21 days, after the 21 days, you're going to see yourself in such a different light that you may be able to up level that statement or that affirmation to something else of, I feel comfortable in my body or I like my body. So that's where we go from. You always meet yourself where you're at and you build up from there so that it's real, it's authentic, and it actually shifts the mindset.
And when you say gratitude practice, what practices could people start with and what could they do?
Yeah, so it depends what your style is, because I think it's always commonly write it down in a journal or notebook. And I love that. I love writing. You can't stop me. But for some people, writing is not their kind of manifesting superpower. It's not something they like doing. So they might want to do a voice note to their friends and voice note what they're grateful for that day. And their friends do the same back. I have a little gratitude group with my friends. You might want to, on your dog walk in the morning, just in your mind or out loud, think about 3 things you're grateful for, or just, be fully immersed in that moment of being on your walk, the sun shining on your face, hopefully, and, taking in nature, taking in everything. So whether it's a written practice, a spoken practice, it doesn't matter. It's whatever feels good to you and gets you into that vibration.
You have a gratitude group. I love that. I've not heard of doing that. So did you just decide with your friends to just start a gratitude group?
Yeah, so it was something that I just wanted to naturally develop because I'd had a written gratitude practice for years. I was consistent, and I feel like I just wanted something a little bit different just to mix it up and to just kind of bring a different kind of energy to the practice. And I think it was probably good for me. I'm autistic myself, so it's good for me to get out of my habits sometimes to actually
Yeah.
try new things. So it was something that was recommended to me by my friend. He was like, "Hey, should we do morning gratitude?" And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be really nice." So we set up a little group with our friends and we would just voice note each other each morning and just say, good morning. And here's what I'm grateful for today. I hope everyone has a really good day. And it was just so nice to just hear what lovely things were happening for them and celebrating them. And then just being able to, listen to those positive things that they were saying, because then that would raise my vibration to be like, wow, look how amazing their day is, or what they've manifested, or what they're going through. That's amazing. And then I would feel like I want to share, what's happening for me. And then it just becomes that ripple effect of you're celebrating other people, you're celebrating yourself. And it just kind of is a really positive space for positivity, really. It's away from kind of social media and all the kind of doom and gloom you tend to wake up to when you scroll on your phone in the morning, to actually have a
Yeah.
little voice note of love from your friend. I think, changes the whole energy of it.
That's what I was going to say. It sounds like really good energy. And do you find that, I mean, that's wonderful. And are these friends in the UK?
All over the world, all
Or
over.
around the world as well, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I do sometimes think, do you get pushback in the UK about the law of attraction and manifesting, would you say?
All the time.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for over a decade. I had it with couponing as well, so it was not my first rodeo. When I first started couponing, something so practical, something that could help so many people, the amount of press and backlash of, it was always portrayed as this like cheap thing to do of like, oh, it's very tacky to coupon. And I was like, there's nothing tacky about being financially empowered. There's nothing tacky about saving yourself money. But I just feel like the UK press, especially, they just love a good moan. They just love to be
Yeah.
like, look at this really positive thing. How can we find a spin? So I was used to it. So when I spiritually awakened and obviously started talking about manifesting and shifting my business and obviously getting featured in the press and, podcasts and all kinds of things here in the UK, the same things with, I was hearing the same things. And I thought, hang on a minute. The first thing was couponing. This is spirituality. It's
Yeah.
not even connected. But I think the thing I hear the most is more around like proof of it, of like the
Yeah.
science, the neuroscience. And that's okay, because sometimes people do want more scientific proof and evidence rather than mindset or spiritual. Everybody needs something different. I think 10 years ago when I was doing this, it was kind of shouting into a void of like, hey, this tool could really help you. And then in 2020, obviously I'd been doing it kind of 4 years at that point. It just exploded on social media, on TikTok. Celebrities left, right, and center were talking about manifesting, and it had this real big surge again.
Yeah.
And especially in the UK, where everybody wanted to talk about manifesting. And obviously, it was fantastic to see because it meant so many other like authors and creators were talking about it, sharing about it. So it just felt more of a conversation in the UK at that point. But yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like in the last 6 years, obviously, since that point, people are a lot more open minded of all ages. You know, I'm asked,
Yeah.
do you just have young people in your membership or your podcast or whatever? It is women and men of all ages across the world, honestly. And that is so lovely to see that even someone in their 50s is awakening to manifestation and is like, actually, I want to, in my retirement, do something different. And
Yeah.
I think that's the great thing about it, that it meets you in your life where you're at and there are no limits to it. So I think people are hearing it more, they're intrigued by it more. And I think that, the more people read, the more people see things, then they're like, oh, okay, there are things out there that can help me.
Because I have seen myself, even things with like quantum physics and kind of looking at atoms and, our interaction with them seems to have an impact on them. And
Yeah.
very similar to the sort of law of attraction in that, we're having some sort of impact on the universe around us. But
Yeah.
then just going back to that point, so what do you say to those people then who, because I think it was Stephen Bartlett who was saying about it on the Diary of a CEO about how
Mm.
that, um, you know, it's almost like a bit of a blame culture is manifesting how, oh, I just didn't think of it enough. Like I didn't get myself aligned enough, or I didn't do this. What would you say to that sort of negativity? Opinion. It's not negativity, but just that
Yeah.
opinion.
I would say, because yeah, those opinions do exist, of course, and
Yeah.
rightly so. Not everybody has to agree. Not everybody has to practice something that's not what it says at all, right? But
Yeah.
whether you choose to believe in it or not, it is there. A bit like the law of gravity. You don't have to think about gravity. It's just there. It's one of the energetic laws of the universe. There's not someone who's saying, I've made up this law. It's one of the energetic laws of the universe. So you can argue it or, just don't do it. Like there's no point convincing someone to do it or not. What I say to people is look back in your life. Look back in your lived experience that you have. Were there moments where you said something was going to happen? Were there moments where you thought about something and later on someone has that conversation with you? These are
Yeah.
all just little signs and synchronicities from the universe. Maybe manifesting isn't the path you're going to go down. Maybe it's something else completely. But so many texts over the years, over all the world, talk about manifestation in some form of way, in a different way that they practice it. So it is an ancient teaching. It's not something that came out in 2006 by Rhonda Byrne. It
Yeah.
was mentioned in books from the 1900s, the early 1900s. So there is a lot of text, a lot of kind of research and data, and now the science backing it as well for 100 plus years at this point. So
Yeah.
do your research and find an author you resonate with, find a way. Maybe it is more the science way. I know that some people really connect with. I had a lady in my membership say the other day that she's been trying to get her husband into manifesting for years. And it took him listening to someone talking about the science of manifesting
Yeah.
with the observer effect, the atoms, like you said. And
Mm.
instantly it clicked for him. And he was like, I get it. So
Yeah.
sometimes we just need to hear it in a way that we actually understand it. Maybe it's more spiritual, maybe it's more scientific. There's no right or wrong way. But the blame culture, I have always said, is not true manifestation. What Stephen's talking about and other people who talk about that is toxic spirituality, is toxic positivity.
Yeah.
Some people would argue there's no such thing as toxic positivity or spirituality. It's just not spirituality or manifestation, period. So what is happening there is old school teachings being repeated. And I think they are harmful, and I don't think they are true to manifestation or true to what spirituality actually is. So I've heard things over the years from the law of assumption community in particular, where just like those statements of you didn't manifest it or you manifested that terrible thing happening to you,
Yeah.
the law of attraction is one of 7 energetic laws. It is not the be all and end all. It is not the whole picture. Will we ever know all the intricate workings of how the universe works, why things happen? No, that's our journey here, right? So the law of attraction is responding to you but it is not the whole picture. It is not responsible for why something bad happened to you. You did not manifest that to yourself. And how disempowering is that to tell someone that really traumatic thing that happened,
Yeah.
you manifested it. It's not true. So for me, those teachings are really harmful because then it traps people in fear of, oh my God, I can never think a negative thought because bad things are going to happen.
Yeah.
We have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Do all of them manifest? No, we do not live in a world of instantaneous manifestation. What actually manifests into your reality is who you are, your dominant vibration and your identity, your alignment, who you are. So if we think, God, is it going to be traffic, on the way to work today? There might be, there might not be, but that is not a dominant thought and vibration that's going to impact your whole life.
Yeah.
So we have thoughts. We have positive, neutral, and negative thoughts every single day. Even the most positive people in the world have negative thoughts. They don't all manifest. So I think it's just really important to align with teachings that really do speak about the truth of manifestation. And I think there is such a culture online of 7-second TikToks, which are great. They are needed, but does it give you the full picture? Not always. There's a lot of deeper aspects to manifestation, which people aren't talking about. As I shared, your why, how is your manifestations impacting the collective? When we actually go into, the subconscious work as well around what we're creating, then you get to see that, yes, you are creating your reality, but you're not manifesting bad things happening to you. You're not manifesting, I've heard people say over the years, I wanted to manifest money. Then somebody in my family died. Did I kill them? No, of course
Yeah.
not. Like that was always going to happen. That was just an
Mm.
after effect. You didn't, by your intention, go against someone's free will. Like that's not how life happens. We all have free will. So yeah, they're great conversations to have because I think a lot of people are worried. They're like, I can't have negative thoughts. Of course you can. You are human. Your mind is human. It's going to happen. It's the emotional charge behind those thoughts that is what might need to be looked at if there is some limiting beliefs, fears, or trauma there that is
Yeah.
contributing to those thoughts.
I do remember myself from watching The Secret many years ago and thinking to myself, oh, it is a bit like, oh gosh, my thoughts have got to be monitored all the time. And it can feel a bit of pressure. So
Mhm.
you're saying that all of the thoughts are not creating. It's just more about who just could you clarify that little bit
Yeah.
again? Is that okay? Just to be
Yeah.
really
So
clear.
The Secret, and I don't just want to pigeonhole The Secret because it was shared a lot in old school teachings of thoughts are everything. Thoughts create your reality, full stop. And as you said, we all then felt the fear. We were all then like, oh my gosh, I can never think a negative thought.
Yeah.
And I have autism, so rumination is like ingrained in me. So imagine telling someone like myself to not have a negative thought. Guess what? I'm going to have negative thoughts all day now because my
Yeah.
brain is wired to do that. So I would go around thinking like, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me. I'm having these negative thoughts. I can't stop them. And that was avoidance. That was avoidance of trauma work and inner work. And that wasn't my fault. I didn't know I had to do those things at the time. Obviously, the inner work came up much later on for me where I had the awareness of, oh, right, that's why I have these thoughts because there's beliefs under there, there's trauma under there. And when I obviously deal with that and release that, I don't have those thoughts. Or if I do, there's no emotional charge behind them. So a lot of people say that thoughts are everything. They are not. They are part of the picture. What actually manifests your reality is a combination of your thoughts, your words, and your actions. But what is stronger is your energy, who you are, your alignment. So if you are showing up as primarily, a positive person, a good mindset, you do good in the world, like you have positive intentions, that is your dominant vibration that's going to manifest. Whereas if you're someone who's maybe pessimistic or you're always fearing the worst or whatever's going on, then yeah, your circumstances may reflect a little bit more like that. So it's not just your thoughts that create your reality. I would say your thoughts are the tiniest part of it. The
Yeah.
way you speak to yourself and what you say out loud is stronger because it's a representation of your beliefs. So say, for instance, you catch oh, I just had this thing where money just goes. What you are saying is literally from your subconscious mind. So those stories you say about money, the stories you tell yourself or others about love, That's your identities. That's your belief system. So your belief system is running the show. Our conscious mind, the mind that is listening to this podcast right now, runs 5% of the show. Your subconscious mind runs 95% of the show. It's a big part of it.
Yeah.
So I would say, and that's where your thoughts come from at the end of the day as well, focus on that, your mindset, your subconscious work, your identities, your limiting beliefs, who you are as a person, because that shifts mountains. It's not all about thoughts.
Oh, when you this like, all sorts came to mind there. So when it comes to your subconscious, are you able to tap into that? You say, are you able to?
Yeah.
How do you begin with that? How do you start to change your subconscious mind for people who, they could have grown up in such a limiting space, maybe limiting beliefs and what have you. So if they're in such a limiting mindset without even knowing, because they've just grown up like that, how do you start with that? What do you do with that?
And that is so much more common than we think as well. Like, all of us have grown up in different childhoods, different parents, different starting points in life. So everybody is going to have different beliefs to one another. And some people have gone through trauma in their childhood as well. So everybody's carrying, as I call, the backpack differently. Some people have, 10 years of things to unpack. Some people have a whole lifetime of things to unpack. So I think sometimes people can be a bit like, ooh, inner work, and it can feel quite intimidating, or they might hear my story or other people's story and think, oh gosh, but not everybody has gone through that. That's what's important to remember. Everybody's journey is different, and the inner work is a gentle process as well. So in my second book, Hurt, Healing, Healed, this is what the whole book is about.
Yeah.
The inner work, looking at limiting beliefs, identifying them and releasing them. So in there's a 3-step process of hurt, healing, and healed to guide you through identifying what those blocks could be. So you might find that when someone manifests something, for example, or you hear, good news, maybe you feel a bit of jealousy or a bit of comparison, for example. So just start to notice. You might want to journal it down so you can kind of keep a diary or a log. But anytime you feel resistance, anytime you feel like a feeling that doesn't feel good, just log it, notice it. What was happening? Did anything internally come up of just like, well, who are you to have that? Or that'll never happen for you. Any statements like this are just really good to write down. Any common things you say about your body, yourself, money, relationships, whatever. Write it down, because then you'll start to see some patterns. Is there some self-worth patterns there? Is there some feeling not enough patterns there? Is there comparison patterns? And then you can start to look into, where does that come from? Who's
Yeah.
taught me that? So there's questions in the book, there's practices in the book to guide you through the whole process of this. But definitely go in gently. Like, nothing's going to come up that's not meant to come up. So I think that's
Yeah.
important to say. And it is always like an onion, it's one layer at a time. So yeah, you'll feel so much better for going into these and releasing them, and even just acknowledging that they're there and that's why you have those thoughts can just give you a lot of peace to know, that's where it comes from. Or, oh my gosh, that's what my dad used to say to me as a child, and now I'm thinking that. How interesting.
I think I remember learning about how powerful words were, and the words that I was then saying outwardly about myself, say, for instance, and the words then that my children, I wanted them to hear. So I was really conscious about the kind of things I said about myself around them. And then just learning all about that, I found that so empowering for myself. And
Yeah.
I often hear people still say things, and they'll just frivolously say anything about themselves, and I'm like, please don't say that about yourself, because that's really, disempowering, or it's just so interesting. I find how people speak about themselves or the words that they use, and I hope that even just as talking about this, that'll identify that for a few people, where they'll realize, actually, not only am I just manifesting that out, but it's psychologically impacting me, having, saying these terrible things or even thinking terrible things. Yeah, I think that's a real shift. I think for
Yeah.
me, how I changed that was that if I said something negatively or I thought something negative, it doesn't have to be negative and positive, but just not a nice thing. I then stopped and reframed it or resaid that to myself, and then had to that's how I reprogrammed myself. And I think it's an ongoing job. I think because there's so, like you said, 5% here, 95% of it's back there. there's so much to reprogram once you learn about that. I don't know
And
what your thoughts are.
it's different for everybody. So, for instance, a belief that is deeply, deeply ingrained from, a really long period of your life, maybe even from childhood, yeah, that's probably going to need quite a few reframes and maybe even possibly deeper tools to really get to the root of that for somebody. Whereas something that maybe is less impactful or something that you think, gosh, like I heard that once in my life and my subconscious took that in. Yeah, the 21-day reprogram, like kind of reframing
Yeah.
it and some tools around that, yeah, you'll probably feel a big shift from it. But I think what's important to remember is we're not meant to just be constantly healing ourselves. I think some people get into that cycle as well, where they're
Yeah.
constantly trying to improve, constantly trying to find blocks, find things. And that's also not healthy, because that's not also what the inner work is. It's if something comes up, great. Work with it, release it. There are tools out there, books out there like mine to help you with that, even if that's working with a therapist or a psychotherapist to work through that on a deeper level as well. Sometimes we need that extra help. So it's more of a case of, is something actually coming up, or are we trying to find something? Are we trying to find something to work through? Because things do come up when they're ready to. And if it's not there, you don't need to create a belief that's not there.
I'm coming up to the end at the moment now, and I just wanted to ask: has anything ever impacted you? Has there been anything, that a piece of advice that someone's given you that has really impacted you in some way, or that you carry with you each day or each week, or even if it's each
Mm.
year? Has there been anything ever that anyone said that has really, improved your life?
So many things over the last decade, for sure. But I think the ones that really stick out is something my friend said to me right at the beginning of my kind of awakening and manifestation journey. We actually met on Instagram over a post on manifestation. She lives in Canada. And I've quoted Emma's quote, my friend Emma, so many times in my books, because it was something her mother said to her. And it was when I was going through my breakup. I was obviously spiritually awakening, healing depression. I was in a really dark place. And she said to me, Emma, always remember this: if it doesn't feel good, it's not the end. And I was like, huh? Like, what is
Yeah.
she saying here? Like, okay, I get it. And she said, look, this is something my mother's always said to me. If it was good and it was peaceful, it would be the end. If it's not feeling good, it's not the end. And that just brought me such relief in that moment and peace of like, okay, yeah, there is more to come. And that doesn't necessarily mean that, that relationship was going to come back. It didn't. But it was more of a case of, actually, I will feel peace when it's the end of that chapter. I will feel peace. And that's a piece of advice I've always carried throughout the years and always reminded myself of. If it was the end, it would feel good. I would feel peace. And I can just carry that with me, that maybe there's more to come. Maybe there's a conversation. Maybe there's a shift or a miracle that's going to happen for it to feel that alignment, that peace. Another thing is something that my therapist said to me more recently, actually. And it was so profound. And I'm probably going to actually butcher the story. So it is a Buddhist proverb. It is out there. So go and look it up for the actual story. But we were talking about identities and things that we carry. And he was saying to me, yes, but Emma, you're choosing to carry that. And I was like, well, I don't think I'm voluntarily choosing to carry
Yeah.
this. And he said, let me tell you something that my Buddhist teacher told me all these years ago. And he said it's an ancient Buddhist story around carrying things. And he said there were two Buddhist monks, and they were told that they could not touch women, they could not go near women. And that was the rules. And they were walking along one day in their local town, and they came to a river, and there was a woman struggling at the edge of the river. So one of the Buddhist monks picked her up and helped her across the river and obviously put her down. And they continue walking on, these two monks. And a little bit later, the younger monk says to him, I thought we weren't meant to touch women or help them or, like touch them. And the other monk turned to him and said, I put her down at the river. You've carried her forward to this point. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, that's so simple, but such a profound story of like, oh, he put her down at the river. He chose to carry the story forward of, you can't carry the woman. So that for me was like an aha moment of like, I need to leave it at the river. So I did a little visualization after that of imagining myself putting it in the river, leaving it at the river. And I think it was just a beautiful reframe.
Yeah, I love that story. I've heard that before myself. I think it was Wayne Dyer that talks about that,
Ah.
actually. I heard him talk. Yeah, which a great teacher. Yeah. And so in terms of, I know that that's a story, but I know that with Jolly Soul, we have lots of quotes. I think for me, a quote always has helped. Is there a quote that you may have? I know that you may have just said it there with the original one, the original story, but is there a quote that ever comes to mind or you often use?
I would say one that I often use in my work that I always love to end with is, it's already yours. The reason why you want it so badly is because the future version of yourself already has it. And I think if we can just embody that wisdom of, it's already yours. You don't need to be anybody else to feel worthy and deserving of your heart's desires. You don't need to do anything. It's already yours. All you're doing is just simply aligning with the desire.
Oh, I love that. That's great. What a quote. I finished with 3 big questions. The really big questions. Not everyone's going to know the answer, obviously, but whatever comes to mind is right for you. If it's just one word or if you want to say a sentence, that's entirely up to you. So the 3 big questions. Here we go. What do you think the key to success is?
Regulation. Regulation of the nervous system, 100%. When you have your regulation in your nervous system, when you feel connected and steady and in your body, anything is possible.
Okay, fantastic. What do you think the secret to happiness is?
Unconditional love. That's an easy one for me to say, because everything comes back to love of self, love of others, and that unconditional love. When you have that for yourself, and I know that unconditional love sounds like a big word, but it is that true, authentic love for yourself. That's what it means at its core. So for me, without that, I'd have nothing. So yeah.
That's beautiful. What do you think the meaning of life is?
Oh gosh, there's what I think, and then there's so many things of like what others think, right? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I would say a lot of spiritual people believe we live in the world of creation, and that is what we're here to experience in this lifetime on this earth is creation of so many things, right? And I love that. I think that's great. I think the meaning of life is also, I think, learning, but I feel like that's an obvious one. I do feel it's creation, but I feel that it's getting to choose a life on your terms, which aligns with unconditional love, and achieving and being everything that you want to be that is in alignment with your soul.
Beautiful. I love it. That's
Which is
fantastic.
basically creation.
Yeah. But in a really nicely put up way. So normally I would ask you to choose out of the jar, but we're not together at the moment. So if you don't mind, I choose one for you.
Go for it.
This is a quote from the Jolly Soul page. You try not to look. I nearly cheated there and actually chose one. Let me just grab this one. Oh, okay, it's rather large. So your quote of the day is, focus on the little wins today, even if it feels difficult, there's always something to be grateful for. There we go, that's yours. So
That's what
I
we
just
spoke
want to
about.
say, oh goodness, thank you so much for today. It has been an absolute pleasure to speak to you and learn a little bit more about manifestation. And just to say to everyone listening, the books that you have are available on Amazon, I believe. Aligned
Yep.
Abundance, Hurt Healing Healed. That was a tongue twister. And Positively Wealthy, which we didn't actually cover so much, but I would love to meet you again and maybe in person at some point in the future. We can continue our conversation about manifestation and spirituality, but you're available on many platforms, which we will have discussed in the intro, and it'll be in all the show notes and things like that as well. So, but YouTube, I believe, would be maybe the main platform to find you.
Yeah, if you want to learn
On the
more, I've
website.
got 10 years of YouTube videos. I've got 9 years of my podcast, Aligned Abundance, as well. So there is an abundance of free content to get your teeth into.
And obviously website to meet with you if as a life coach. Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much for today. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to speak with you. And no doubt I will be speaking to you again at some point.
I'd love that. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you so much. Thank you.